So putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and not just so that you can check the box, but so that you can say, hey, what is it that you're going through? What are you experiencing? So let's do that really quick. So you're both fathers. Lately, we've heard a lot about how terrible you are as police officers, as law enforcement officers, that there's this agenda, there's this might, there's this power that you wield in order to oppress and be bold. As dads, interacting with your kids, or them hearing those statements, to fathers who leave the house every morning, putting their lives on the line. I don't go into work thinking, I've got to make sure that I'm carrying a gun and I'm probably going to face some criminals on a daily basis. There is some interaction of heightened probability of harm coming to yourself, and you are serving your family, you're serving your community. This is a grinding job with a lot of expectations, a lot of authority. And to hear the narrative of how, as much as you're putting out, there's this anger towards you. What does that do to you in terms of, let's kind of focus on the father aspect of it, of being a dad to these kids, that you're not just protecting the community, you're protecting them, and now they might be hearing dad is part of this problem. How do you process that?
Well, I guess my kids have not, I don't think, experienced that yet. I think my oldest daughter is probably close to where she's understanding it, but they haven't. And again, I'm not on the street all the time. My role is a little bit different, so I build cases over a longer period of time, so my daily interaction is less frequent. Um, but as a maybe I'm going to disappoint your question if I do bring it back to it. But when you were saying this, what just struck me was how would I feel as a parent? Like I just go back to this. This just happened. This 8-year-old girl in Atlanta. If I was her dad, like how would I feel as a parent if my daughter got shot and killed and there was nothing that got done about it, or that there was nothing I could do to protect her? And how do and I think that's the part where, this division between law enforcement and poor communities, or however you want to describe them, that's drawing this tension is, I think you have these parents that are grieving for these kids that they've lost, just like I would grieve as a father. And you have these law enforcement officers that really sincerely want to come in and provide justice. You can't bring back the kids out, but provide justice for what's happened to these kids. And there is such a disconnect between the trust from the community to law enforcement that we are just missing it. There is no justice, and I think that's what strikes me would be so difficult as a father. Now, I think you're asking me how do I shield my kids. I guess I really haven't had to do that. We talk a lot. I mean, we've talked. I mean, I do it through daily conversations. Though. I mean, I sit down with my kids and we talk about what's going on in the world. I mean, they're aware of George Floyd, and they haven't watched the video or anything, but they're aware of what's happening. I don't. Well, and I will say, like right after it happened, our team. I was part of a team that got sent up to D.C. to assist with helping out, with policing the protesting. And I will say, like, that was a strenuous time for maybe more so my wife than my children, but just the unknown of like it was when things were heating up and you just didn't know what was going to happen next, and you didn't really know what situation you were walking into, and you know. But in general, I think I don't know. I don't know how to great answer. I Am I just missing the question on
No, I mean,
well, I don't think I've had to do what you're asking me, like as far as shielding them from the outside. They
Well,
have a
even-
process.
Even the knowledge, I go to work every day because this is where God's placed me, but also with a great sense of responsibility to my family. This is my career. This is what I do, and I don't have the media that's telling the world how terrible people in my position are. So how does that, more personally, less applicably of how you interact with the kids, how does that sit on your soul?
No, my same situation with my children are a little bit beyond where they would perceive any of that. Kind of like he alluded to, spouses obviously are going to feel a little bit of fear. They perceive this heightened aggressiveness towards police at any level, any law enforcement officer. And I think that that's worn on my spouse every time I leave for work. But to expand on what you're saying internally, I think I kind of see what you're asking. I felt what you're asking, where I truly do fear that people, especially people that maybe I've had long-term relationships with, are going to start to question, me and my character. Like, because all that they're seeing is if you chose a career in law enforcement, it's because you want to be a bully and you want to abuse people and, look for whoever you can to target, and you're probably a racist as well, and et cetera, any number of negative things, to the point where I wonder when I, see my neighbor who I've known for years, and we've always got along with great, perfect, never had an issue. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder if they look at me different now and think like every time they see me get in my car and go to work, like, oh, you must be, going to, do whatever terrible things that these law enforcement officers do. Realistically, I don't think most people do. I think what I was speaking on earlier, especially the people we know, realize that you are a human because that's how they know you in a human form. But out in public, I kind of worry as well sometimes. How do these people look at me when I'm picking up my coffee in the morning or whatever and go, I used to think he was the friendly neighborhood cop, and he comes in here a couple times a week to get his coffee. Now I'm starting to think he's probably, a jerk or a terrible person. And yeah, I mean, it hurts you because you're like, I don't want to be the bad guy. I didn't sign up to be the bad guy. It's the opposite. I grew up wanting to be the good guy.
Wow.
And, that's not to say that there's just bad and good. I'm simplifying it for that image, but I love my community. I mean, I don't even really get into the whole country aspect of it. I think we just start with focus on our own communities. I've been a part of this community my entire life, and I hate to think that other members of my community look at me, dropping my kid off at school or whatever I'm doing, and they go, I think he's in law enforcement. I don't want my kids near his kids. He's probably, this, that, or the other. When it's quite the opposite. I'm like, man, I'd love to, take our kids to the beach together or whatever it is you want to do. But unfortunately, I'm painted as somebody you probably don't really want to get to know right now.
Yeah, I think we're people too. I mean, we are people and we make mistakes, and I think, unfortunately, in our world, when one of us makes a mistake, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of police officers across the country, one of us makes a mistake, it affects us all. And I think that's the world we live in now that's difficult. But if you're having a conversation about what we would like the message to be is, in the same way that you don't want to be judged for the actions of somebody else that you don't like, just because one officer makes a mistake or a couple officers make a mistake doesn't mean every officer in the country is a bad person. And and again, that's an oversimplification, but I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, is that to the point where we're not all like that. I hope that the majority of us aren't like that. And I believe that, but so treat the officers in your world, give them a fair shake. Let their actions dictate how you perceive them, and don't just listen to the media narrative for the last 3 months to decide whether a law enforcement officer is good or bad. And I think that's true with any walk of life. You can't. And that's what racism's all about. You know, you don't want to be that way. You don't want to be taking somebody apart you don't know just because of this preconceived notion of